The morning sun cast long shadows across Colony Nexus 7 as Commander Thexal Vor stood on the observation deck of the Central Command Tower. Below him stretched a city that had never known fear. Gleaming metal buildings rose from the red soil of Kethvar moon like silver fingers reaching toward the stars. Between them moved thousands of Veltar colonists, going about their daily lives with the confidence of beings who believed themselves completely safe. Above the colony stretched the great shield that made their safety possible. To the naked eye it appeared as nothing more than a faint shimmer in the air like heat waves rising from hot ground. But Thexal knew better. That shimmer was the most advanced defensive technology in known space. It was a barrier that combined quantum energy fields with twisted time itself to create something no weapon could penetrate. For 30 years the shield had protected them, 30 years without a single successful attack. Enemy fleets had tried everything. Plasma cannons that could melt mountains bounced off like raindrops. Nuclear missiles exploded harmlessly against its surface. Even the dreaded antimatter weapons of the Kresh Empire had failed to leave so much as a scratch. The commander turned as footsteps echoed behind him. Dr. Kirill Nex approached, carrying a data tablet in his four-fingered hands. The scientist's pale blue skin looked even paler than usual in the morning light. "The Daily Shield Report, Commander," Kirill said, offering the tablet. His voice carried the slight musical quality common to all Veltar speech. Thexal took the device and scanned the numbers. Power levels at maximum efficiency. Quantum coherence stable at 99.7%. Temporal displacement fields operating within normal parameters. Everything perfect as always. "Still no sign of weakness after all these years," the commander said with satisfaction. "I sometimes wonder if we built this thing too well. Our enemies have stopped even trying to attack us." Kirill's large black eyes reflected mild amusement. "Perhaps that was the point, Commander. A weapon that prevents war through its mere existence." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city wake up below them. Transport pods glided silently between buildings carrying workers to their jobs. In the agricultural domes, green plants grew under artificial suns, providing food for the colony. The mining operations beyond the city limits sent automated haulers, carrying precious metals toward the orbital refineries. "Sir," came a voice from behind them. Both aliens turned to see Captain Velcor approaching. The security chief's usually calm demeanor showed signs of puzzlement. "What is it, Captain?" Thexal asked. "We have received some interesting intelligence from our scouts in the outer systems," Velcor replied. "It concerns the humans." The commander's expression hardened slightly. Humans had been a growing concern for the Confederacy over the past few years. These strange two-legged creatures had appeared seemingly from nowhere and begun establishing settlements in systems the Veltar considered their territory. "What about them?" Thexal demanded. "3 of their colonies have gone silent in the past week. Our long-range sensors show the settlements have been completely abandoned. No signs of battle, no distress signals. The humans simply vanished overnight." "Doctor," Kirill tilted his head curiously. "That is unusual behavior. From what we know of humans, they are quite territorial about their settlements." "Perhaps they finally realized they cannot compete with superior Veltar technology," Thexal suggested with a dismissive wave of his hand. "These humans are primitive, compared to us. Their weapons are crude. Their ships barely hold together. It was only a matter of time before they gave up trying to challenge us." Captain Velcor nodded, but something in his expression suggested he was not entirely convinced. "That may be true, Commander, but the pattern troubles me. Why abandon 3 separate colonies at the same time? And why leave behind valuable equipment and supplies?" "Who can understand the minds of primitives?" Thexal replied. "Perhaps they finally understood that any attempt to threaten Confederacy interests would be futile. Our shield technology alone makes us untouchable." The security chief seemed about to say more, but was interrupted by a soft chiming from the communications panel built into the observation deck's railing. Dr. Kirill touched the activation pad and a holographic display appeared in the air before them. The image showed Admiral Zethek calling from the command bridge of the orbital defense station. The Admiral's scarred face looked down at them with the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. "Commander Thexal," the Admiral said, "I wanted to update you on the status of our defensive fleet. All ships are at full readiness. The new quantum torpedoes have been installed and tested. I doubt even the Kresh Empire would dare attempt another assault knowing what awaits them. Excellent news, Admiral, Thexal replied. Though I suspect our enemies have learned their lesson. The shield combined with your fleet makes this colony absolutely impregnable. Admiral Zethek smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. Indeed, I have been monitoring communications from various enemy factions. There is much discussion about the impossibility of breaching our defenses. Some even refer to Colony Nexus 7 as the Untouchable Fortress. The three Veltar on the observation deck shared satisfied expressions. The name was fitting. After decades of successful defense, they had proven that some targets were simply beyond the reach of any enemy. What of human activity in nearby systems? Captain Velcor asked. Nothing significant, Admiral Zethek responded. A few scattered. Patrols, but they keep their distance. Our intelligence suggests their military capabilities are quite limited compared to other potential threats. Single-pilot fighters, small transport vessels. Nothing that could pose a serious challenge to our defenses. Dr. Kirill made some notes on his tablet. I have been analyzing captured human technology. Their engineering is surprisingly crude yet somehow effective. They seem to prefer simple solutions over elegant complexity. The mark of an inferior civilization, Commander Thexal stated firmly. They lack the advanced understanding necessary to create truly sophisticated systems like our shield generators. The morning continued with routine reports and updates. Mining operations were ahead of schedule. Food production remained stable. The orbital factories continued producing advanced weapons and equipment for other Confederacy worlds. Everything functioned with the smooth efficiency that came from 3 decades of uninterrupted peace. As the 3 officers discussed plans for expanding the colony's industrial capacity, none of them noticed the small blip that appeared briefly on the edge of their sensor network. It registered for only a few seconds before vanishing again. The automated systems classified it as sensor noise and discarded the data without alerting anyone. Far above them in the orbital command center, similar sensor ghosts appeared and disappeared on various displays. Each one lasted just long enough to be detected before fading away. The pattern meant nothing to the Veltar computers, which were programmed to ignore such minor anomalies. But if someone had been watching carefully, they might have noticed that these sensor contacts were getting slightly closer each time they appeared, and they seemed to be following a very deliberate pattern, as if something was testing the edges of the colony's detection grid. Something was coming toward Colony Nexus 7, something that moved carefully and quietly through space like a predator, stalking its prey. But the colonists remained unaware, focused as they were on their daily routines and confident in their absolute safety. The shield continued to shimmer overhead. The orbital fleet maintained its vigilant watch. The city below hummed with activity and prosperity. Everything seemed perfect in the Untouchable Fortress, at least for now. The alarm began as a soft beeping in the colony's main control center. Duty Officer Nextal looked up from his routine monitoring displays with mild curiosity rather than concern. After 30 years of perfect peace, alarms usually meant nothing more serious than a system test or minor equipment malfunction. Contact detected entering outer atmosphere, the computer announced in its calm synthetic voice. Single object, small mass. Trajectory indicates uncontrolled descent. Nextal touched his communication panel. Commander Thexal to Control Center, please. Within minutes, the commander arrived along with Captain Velcor and Dr. Kirill Nex. The 3 officers gathered around the main display screen, which showed a 3-dimensional image of Kethvar Moon, with a small red dot moving through the upper atmosphere. What do we have? Commander Thexal asked. Unknown object, sir, Nextal replied, highlighting the contact with his finger. Mass approximately 800 kilograms. Metal construction. No active propulsion detected. It appears to be falling rather than flying. Dr. Kirill studied the readouts with scientific interest. The trajectory suggests it came from deep space, possibly debris from some distant battle or accident. Could it be a weapon? Captain Velcor asked with professional caution. Unlikely, the scientist replied. The object shows no energy signatures, consistent with explosive devices or active systems. Its path is purely ballistic. Whatever it is, it seems dead in space. Commander Thexall nodded slowly. Where will it impact? The computer calculated quickly. Current trajectory indicates landing in Sector 7, sir. The mining district approximately 15 kilometers from the main colony. Still within our shield perimeter, Velcor observed. How did it get through the shields? Thexall demanded with sudden sharpness. Dr. Kirill checked his instruments. The shields are functioning perfectly, Commander. However, they are designed to stop weapons and powered vessels. Small, unpowered objects, moving slowly enough, can sometimes pass through the quantum barriers. It is a known limitation, but one we considered acceptable, given the extremely low probability of such an occurrence. And now it has occurred, the commander said grimly. The officers watched as the falling object continued its descent toward the moon's surface. As it entered the denser layers of atmosphere, friction began to heat its outer shell, causing it to glow like a small star against the dark sky. Sir, Nextall called from his station. I'm getting better readings now that the object is closer. Computer analysis suggests it is some kind of escape pod or small spacecraft. Captain Velcor leaned forward with increased interest. Occupied, or empty. Sensors detect one life form inside. Weak vital signs. Whoever is in there appears to be unconscious or near death. Commander Thexall considered this information. An escape pod meant survivors from some disaster. But survivors of what race? The vital signs would help identify the species once they could scan more carefully. Prepare a recovery team, he ordered. Full medical support and security escort. I want that pod and its occupant brought to the colony immediately. The falling star continued its fiery descent, watched now by dozens of colonists who had noticed the bright streak across their sky. Children pointed excitedly while their parents wondered what could have penetrated their famous shields. Most assumed it was nothing dangerous. After all, if the shields had allowed it through, the object must be harmless. The pod struck the rocky ground of Sector 7 with tremendous force, sending up a cloud of red dust and debris. Mining equipment scattered. Across the impact site was knocked aside like toys. The pod itself bounced twice before sliding to a stop against a large boulder. Captain Velcor arrived at the crash site within 20 minutes, leading a team of security officers and medical personnel. The escape pod lay twisted and smoking in a shallow crater it had carved into the ground. Scorch marks covered its outer hull and several panels had been torn away during the violent descent. Careful approach, Velcor ordered his team. Unknown technology, unknown occupant. The security officers moved forward with weapons ready, while the medical team followed with their scanning equipment. As they got closer, the pod's design became clearer. It was definitely artificial, but built with an engineering style none of them recognized. Captain called Medical Officer Quinta from beside the pod. I'm detecting one life form inside. Vital signs are weak but stable. Whatever species this is, they are still alive. Velcor examined the pod's exterior. Can you identify the race? Not from these readings, sir. The biological patterns are unfamiliar. We'll need to open the pod for direct examination. It took the recovery team nearly an hour to cut through the pod's damaged access hatch. When it finally opened with a hiss of escaping atmosphere, the officers got their first look at the occupant. The being inside was unlike anything in their databases. It stood roughly the same height as a Veltar, but with only 2 legs and 2 arms instead of the more common 4-limb arrangement. Its skin was a pale pinkish color rather than the blues and greens typical of most known species. Strange dark hair covered the top of its head in an unusual pattern. Definitely alive, Quinta confirmed, running her scanner over the unconscious form. But badly injured. Multiple fractures. Internal bleeding. This being needs immediate medical attention. Captain Velcor studied the strange creature with professional interest. The face was oddly flat compared to most sentient species. The eyes were closed but appeared to be unusually small. Most puzzling of all, the being had only 5 digits on each hand rather than the standard 4 or 6. What race is this? He asked. Medical Officer Quinta shook her head. I have never seen anything like it, Captain. The body structure is completely foreign to our databases. One of the security officers was examining the pod's interior. Sir, I found some kind of data storage device. Looks like it might be a personal recorder or log system. Careful with that, Velcor warned. Unknown technology could be dangerous. Also, found these. The officer continued holding up several small objects. Appear to be personal belongings, some kind of flat sheets with markings on them, maybe writing or pictures. Velcor took one of the sheets and examined it. The markings were definitely artificial symbols arranged in neat rows, some kind of written language, but not one he recognized. The symbols looked almost like small pictures drawn with simple lines and curves. Load everything into the transport, he ordered. The creature and all its belongings. Dr. Kirill will want to examine everything once we return to the colony. The medical team carefully extracted the unconscious being from the damaged pod and placed it on a floating stretcher. As they lifted it into their transport vehicle, Quinta noticed something interesting. "Captain," she said, "look at this." She pointed to a small device attached to the creature's chest. It was no bigger than her thumb and seemed to be some kind of medical monitor or life support system. "Should we remove it?" Velcor asked. "Better not. It appears to be keeping the being stable. Without it, they might die." The transport convoy returned to Colony Nexus 7 with their mysterious passenger. Word of the crash had already spread through the colony, and curious crowds gathered along their route trying to catch a glimpse of the unknown visitor. In the medical center, Dr. Kirill waited with his team of scientists, ready to begin their examination. This was the first time an unknown species had ever reached their world. The scientific opportunity was unprecedented. Commander Thexal stood beside the medical table looking down at the unconscious creature. "What do you think, Doctor?" "Fascinating," Kirill replied, adjusting his scanning equipment. "The biological structure is remarkably similar to our own, despite the obvious differences. This being appears to be fully sentient based on brain activity patterns. Where did it come from? That will require more investigation. The pod systems are completely different from any technology we know. But I suspect this being traveled a very long distance to reach us." The unconscious creature stirred slightly on the medical table. Its strange flat eyelids fluttered as if it might be waking up. "Increase the life support," Quinta suggested. "Whatever this being is, it has been through terrible trauma." None of the Veltar gathered around the medical table realized they were looking at their first human being. None of them suspected that this seemingly helpless creature represented the advanced scout of the most dangerous species they would ever encounter. The being on the table was called Do-hyun, and he was very much awake. Do-hyun opened his eyes slowly, letting them adjust to the strange blue-tinted lighting of the medical facility. Every part of his body ached from the violent crash, but he was alive. More importantly, he was exactly where he needed to be. He had been conscious during most of the rescue operation. The drugs he had taken before the crash were designed to slow his heart rate and breathing to mimic severe injury while keeping his mind alert. Now, as Medical Officer Quinta leaned over him with her scanner, he allowed himself to appear confused and disoriented. "The being is awakening," Quinta called to the others gathered around his bed. Do-hyun blinked several times and tried to sit up. He made sure to wince in apparent pain and fall back onto the medical table. Through half-closed eyes, he studied the aliens surrounding him. They matched the descriptions from human intelligence reports perfectly. Tall, blue-skinned humanoids, with large black eyes and four-fingered hands. Commander Thexal stepped closer to the bed. "Can you understand us?" he asked, speaking slowly and clearly. Do-hyun had spent months studying the Veltar language from intercepted communications. He understood every word but pretended confusion. "Where?" he whispered weakly. "What happened to me?" Dr. Kirill adjusted his translation device. "The being appears to be trying to communicate. The language is unfamiliar, but the universal translator is making progress." "Safe," Do-hyun said, using a word he knew the translator would recognize. "Am I safe?" "You are safe," Commander Thexal replied. "You crashed on our world, we rescued you. What is your species? Where do you come from?" Do-hyun closed his eyes as if the effort of speaking was too much. "Human," he said quietly. "I am human. My name is Do-hyun." The Veltar officers exchanged glances. They had heard of humans but never encountered one directly. According to their intelligence reports, humans were a primitive species with limited technology and no real threat to Confederacy. Interests. How did you get here, Do-hyun? Dr. Kirill asked gently. Your escape pod traveled a very long distance. Do-hyun opened his eyes and looked directly at the scientist. Attack, he said with apparent difficulty. Research station destroyed. Everyone dead. I barely escaped. What attacked your station? Commander Thexall demanded. Pirates, maybe, or raiders. Ships came from nowhere. Weapons I never seen before. They destroyed everything. Do-hyun let his voice break as if remembering traumatic events. My sister So Young was there. My friend Jin-woo. All dead now. Medical Officer Quinta touched his arm gently. You need rest. Your injuries are severe. We will help you heal. Over the following days, Do-hyun played his role perfectly. He appeared grateful for the medical treatment and fascinated by Veltar technology. He asked innocent questions about their colony and seemed amazed by their advanced civilization. Your shield is incredible, he told Dr. Kirill during one of their conversations. How does it work? The scientist was happy to explain to someone who showed such genuine interest. It combines quantum energy fields with temporal distortion. The barrier exists slightly outside normal time, making it impossible for weapons to affect. Amazing, Do-hyun said with wonder in his voice. Humans have nothing like this. Our technology is very simple compared to yours. Dr. Kirill felt pleased by the humans' admiration. Perhaps we can share some of our knowledge with your people. Peaceful cooperation between species benefits everyone. That would be wonderful, Do-hyun replied, though I fear there are not many humans left after the attack on our station. As his supposed injuries healed, Do-hyun was given more freedom to move around the medical facility. He learned the names of the staff members and began picking up the Veltar language with surprising speed. The aliens attributed this to human adaptability rather than months of prior study. Captain Velkor visited regularly to ask questions about human technology and military capabilities. Do-hyun answered honestly, but emphasized how primitive and limited human equipment was compared to Veltar systems. Our ships are small and slow, he explained. Our weapons are chemical explosives mostly. Nothing that could threaten a colony like this. Your defenses are perfect. This information matched what the Veltar already believed about human capabilities. They began to relax around their unexpected guest, seeing him as more of a curiosity than any kind of threat. After a week in the medical center, Do-hyun was moved to guest quarters in the main colony. Commander Thexall personally escorted him through the city streets, pointing out various buildings and installations with obvious pride. This is our industrial sector, the commander explained as they passed a complex of manufacturing plants. We produce some of the most advanced technology in known space. Do-hyun studied everything with careful eyes while maintaining his expression of innocent amazement. The power distribution systems, the communication networks, the transportation hubs. Every detail was automatically recorded by the small device the Veltar had mistaken for a medical implant. How many people live here? Do-hyun asked. 50,000 Veltar citizens, Thexall replied proudly, all protected by our perfect defenses. This colony has never been successfully attacked in 30 years. Incredible, Do-hyun said, shaking his head in apparent disbelief. Humans could never build something like this. His guest quarters were comfortable and well appointed. Do-hyun was given access to the colony's information systems and encouraged to learn about Veltar culture and technology. He spent hours each day reading through technical manuals and infrastructure reports that the aliens shared freely. At night when the colony was quiet, Do-hyun would examine the data he had collected. The recording device, disguised as a medical implant, had captured detailed scans of every system he had encountered: power grids, communication networks, shield generator locations, defense control centers. Most importantly, he had identified the colony's critical weakness. The shield that protected them was indeed nearly impenetrable from outside, but it could be disrupted from within if someone knew exactly where to target the quantum field generators. Do-hyun began making friends among the colony's technical staff. His innocent questions about engineering problems led to invitations to visit various facilities. The Veltar were proud of their achievements and happy to show off their technology to someone who appreciated it so enthusiastically. "Would you like to see the main power distribution center?" Engineer Mexta asked one day. "I think you would find it fascinating." "I would be honored," Do-hyun replied with genuine excitement. The power center was a massive underground facility that supplied energy to the entire colony, including the shield generators. Do-hyun walked through the installation asking technical questions and offering helpful suggestions based on his supposed experience with primitive human technology. "You know," he said to Mexta as they examined a control panel. "Humans discovered that quantum field generators sometimes develop harmonic resonance problems if they run continuously for long periods. Have you ever experienced anything like that?" Mexta considered the question. "Not that I know of. Our systems have been running perfectly for decades." "Of course they have," Do-hyun said quickly. "Your technology is far more advanced than ours. I was just curious about the theoretical possibility." But Mexta was intrigued by the technical discussion. What kind of resonance problems did humans encounter? Do-hyun explained in careful detail exactly the kind of harmonic frequency that could destabilize quantum barriers. He presented it as a primitive human engineering problem rather than a potential weapon against Veltar defenses. Over the following weeks, Do-hyun visited dozens of facilities throughout the colony: water treatment plants, food processing centers, communication hubs, manufacturing complexes. Everywhere he went, he was welcomed as a fascinating guest and given complete access to technical information. The aliens never suspected that their helpful visitor was actually conducting the most thorough reconnaissance mission in military history. Every conversation was recorded, every technical detail was analyzed, every weakness was cataloged for future exploitation. Late at night in his guest quarters, Do-hyun would transmit compressed data bursts to a relay satellite hidden in the outer system. The transmissions were disguised as background radiation and lasted only milliseconds. To the Veltar monitoring systems, they appeared as natural cosmic phenomena. Those data bursts carried complete intelligence on Colony Nexus 7's defenses to a human fleet waiting in deep space beyond sensor range. Jinwoo and So-young were very much alive aboard the command ship, analyzing every piece of information their partner sent them. The three humans had trained together for this mission for over a year. They had studied Veltar technology, psychology, and culture until they could predict alien responses with perfect accuracy. They knew exactly how to exploit Veltar pride and confidence to gain the access they needed. Do-hyun's role was the most dangerous. If his true identity was discovered, he would face immediate execution, but his performance had been flawless. The aliens trusted him completely and shared their secrets freely with someone they saw as a harmless refugee. As he prepared for sleep on his 30th night in the colony, Do-hyun reviewed the intelligence he had gathered. He now knew everything about Colony Nexus 7's defenses, shield generators, power systems, communication networks, personnel locations, emergency procedures. The first malfunction appeared to be nothing more than a minor annoyance. A power fluctuation in Sector 12 that lasted exactly 3.7 seconds before systems automatically corrected themselves. The duty engineer logged the incident as routine equipment aging and thought nothing more of it. Do-hyun was in the colony's main library when the lights briefly dimmed. He looked up from the technical manual he was reading with apparent concern. "Is everything all right?" he asked the Veltar librarian. "Just a small power glitch," she replied dismissively. "These things happen occasionally in facilities this large." Do-hyun nodded and returned to his reading, but internally he was satisfied. The first of his nanotransmitters had activated successfully. The device was smaller than a grain of sand and had been planted inside a power junction box during his tour of the electrical systems 3 days earlier. Over the following week, similar minor malfunctions began occurring throughout the colony. Communication systems would briefly lose signal clarity. Environmental controls would fluctuate for a few seconds before stabilizing. Transport pods would experience momentary navigation errors. Each incident was small and quickly corrected by the colony's automated repair systems. The Veltar technical staff logged them as routine maintenance issues. After 30 years of perfect, Operation, they expected some equipment to show signs of age. Do-hyun made himself useful by helping to troubleshoot these problems. His innocent questions and suggestions often led the repair teams to discover the exact source of each malfunction. He was becoming known throughout the colony as someone with an unusual talent for finding technical problems. "You have excellent instincts for this kind of work," Engineer Mexta told him as they examined a faulty communication relay. "Have you considered staying here permanently? We could use someone with your skills." "That is very kind," Do-hyun replied. "But I should probably try to contact other human survivors when I am fully recovered. There might be others who escaped the attack on our station." Mexta nodded understandingly. "Of course. Though you are welcome here as long as you need." The engineer did not notice the tiny device Do-hyun attached to the underside of the communication panel while they worked. It would remain dormant for several more days before beginning its assigned function. As the malfunctions continued, Captain Velcor began to notice a pattern. The problems always seemed to occur in systems that Do-hyun had recently visited or helped repair. It could be coincidence, but 30 years of security work had taught him to be suspicious of coincidences. He brought his concerns to Commander Thexall during their weekly briefing. "Sir, I believe we should increase surveillance on our human guest," Velcor said carefully. "Why?" the commander asked with mild interest. "Has he done something suspicious?" "Not directly, sir. But I have noticed that system malfunctions seem to follow his movements around the colony. He has been present at or near every major technical problem we have experienced in the past 2 weeks." Commander Thexall considered this information. "He has been helping our engineers solve those same problems. Dr. Kirill tells me the human has shown remarkable aptitude for understanding our technology. That troubles me, sir. How does a primitive species develop such understanding so quickly?" "Perhaps humans are not as primitive as we assumed," Thexall replied. "Intelligence can exist even in less advanced civilizations." Captain Velcor was not entirely satisfied, but he could not argue with the logic. Do-hyun had indeed been helpful in solving technical problems. His suggestions had saved the maintenance crews considerable time and effort. Meanwhile, Do-hyun continued his careful work of sabotage. Each nanotransmitter was programmed for a specific function. Some would disrupt power flows, others would interfere with communication signals. A few were designed to create false readings in sensor systems. The devices were nearly impossible to detect. They used the colony's own power grid for energy and transmitted on frequencies that appeared to be background electromagnetic noise. Even if one was discovered, it would be almost impossible to trace its origin or understand its purpose. Dr. Kirill had become particularly fond of their human guest and often invited him to observe various scientific experiments. Do-hyun was always eager to learn and asked thoughtful questions that showed genuine intellectual curiosity. "Your species has great potential," the scientist told him one evening as they watched a demonstration of quantum field manipulation. "With proper guidance, humans could develop impressive technology. We have always been good at learning from others," Do-hyun replied modestly. "Humans are natural mimics. We see something that works and we adapt it for our own use." This statement was more accurate than Dr. Kirill realized. Do-hyun was indeed learning from everything he observed, but not in the way the scientist intended. Every piece of Veltar technology was being analyzed for potential weaknesses and countermeasures. The nanotransmitters were just the beginning of Do-hyun's plan. Their primary function was not sabotage, but intelligence gathering. Each device was recording detailed information about the systems it was attached to. Power flow patterns, communication protocols, security procedures, emergency response sequences. All of this data was being transmitted to the hidden relay satellite and forwarded to the waiting human fleet. Jin Woo and So Young were using the information to plan the final assault on Colony Nexus 7. As the system malfunctions increased in frequency, some of the technical staff began to worry. Engineer Mexta approached Do-hyun with his concerns. "These problems are becoming more common," he said, showing Do-hyun a maintenance report. "In the past month, we have had more equipment failures than in the previous 5 years combined." Do-hyun studied the data with apparent concern. "Could it be some kind of cascading system failure?" he suggested. Humans have seen problems like this when one malfunction creates stress that leads to other malfunctions. That is possible, Mexta agreed. But our systems are designed to prevent such cascades. Of course they are, Do-hyun said quickly. I was just thinking out loud. Your technology is far more sophisticated than anything humans have built. But the seed of an idea had been planted. Mexta began to consider whether the recent problems might be connected in some way. He ordered additional diagnostic tests on all major systems. The tests revealed nothing abnormal. Every system showed normal operating parameters. The nanotransmitters were too small and too well hidden to appear on standard scans. But the increased scrutiny forced Do-hyun to be more careful about his activities. He began spending more time in his guest quarters appearing to rest and recover from his injuries. In reality, he was using this time to communicate with the human fleet through carefully timed data bursts. The messages he received were encouraging. Jin-woo reported that fleet preparations were nearly complete. So-young had finished analyzing the shield generator specifications and confirmed that Do-hyun's sabotage plan would work. Estimated time to assault phase, came the coded message. 72 hours maximum. Do-hyun acknowledged the message and began his final preparations. He had identified 12 critical systems that needed to be disrupted simultaneously to bring down the colony's defenses. Most of his nanotransmitters were already in place, but a few final devices needed to be planted. The next morning brought news that made his timeline even more urgent. Commander Thexal announced that Admiral Zethik would be conducting a full inspection of the orbital defense fleet in 3 days. All systems would be tested, and any problems would be investigated thoroughly. If the inspection uncovered evidence of sabotage, Do-hyun's mission would be compromised. He needed to complete his work and signal the fleet before Admiral Zethik began asking difficult questions. That afternoon, Do-hyun visited the main shield control center for what he claimed would be his final technical tour. Dr. Kirill personally escorted him through the facility, explaining how the quantum barriers were generated and maintained. "This is the heart of our defense system," the scientist said proudly as they stood before the primary control matrix. "From this room we can monitor and adjust every aspect of the shield." Do-hyun studied the control systems with careful attention. This was the most critical target for his final sabotage device. If he could disrupt the control matrix at the right moment, the entire shield would collapse. "Fascinating," he said, reaching out to touch one of the control panels. "The quantum field. Generators must require incredible precision to maintain stability." "Indeed they do," Dr. Kirill replied, not noticing the microscopic device Do-hyun left behind on the panel surface. That evening, Do-hyun sent his final intelligence report to the hidden satellite. The message contained activation codes for all of his nanotransmitters and detailed timing instructions for the assault. "Colony defenses mapped and compromised," the message read in coded format. "Sabotage devices in position, ready to proceed on your signal." The reply came back within hours. "Fleet moving to assault position. Begin final phase at 0800 local time tomorrow." Do-hyun smiled as he read the message. After 6 weeks of careful infiltration, the moment of truth was finally at hand. Tomorrow, the aliens would discover that their untouchable fortress was not as impregnable as they believed. He spent his final night in the colony reviewing every detail of his plan. The nanotransmitters would activate in sequence, creating a cascade failure that would overwhelm the automatic repair systems. The shield generators would lose synchronization and collapse. The orbital defense fleet would find themselves facing an enemy they could not detect until it was too late. Most importantly, the Veltar would finally understand that humans were not the primitive species they had assumed. They were about to face an enemy that combined advanced technology with tactical cunning and absolute determination. As Do-hyun prepared for sleep, he thought about Jin-woo and So-young waiting aboard the command ship beyond the sensor perimeter. Tomorrow they would be reunited, and their impossible mission would be complete. The untouchable fortress was about to fall. At exactly 0800 local time, Do-hyun pressed a hidden sequence of buttons on the device the Veltar had mistaken for a medical implant. Across Colony Nexus 7, dozens of nanotransmitters received the activation signal and began their deadly work. The first sign of trouble came from the water treatment facility. Pumps that had run smoothly for decades suddenly began operating at conflicting rhythms. Pressure readings spiked and dropped in seemingly random patterns. The automated control systems tried to compensate but found themselves fighting against problems that appeared faster than they could be corrected. Engineer. Mexta was in his office reviewing maintenance schedules when the cascade of failure reports began flooding his communication panel. Water systems, power grids, environmental controls, communication networks. One after another, critical systems throughout the colony began experiencing simultaneous malfunctions. "This is impossible," he said to himself as he watched the alerts multiply on his screen. In the main control center, Commander Thexal and Captain Velcor stood before the colony's master display trying to make sense of what they were seeing. Red warning indicators appeared across every section of the three-dimensional colony map. "What is happening?" Thexal demanded. "Unknown, sir," replied the duty officer. "Multiple system failures throughout the colony, all starting within the past few minutes." Dr. Kirill arrived at a run, his usually calm demeanor replaced by obvious alarm. "Commander, the shield generators are losing synchronization. Quantum field coherence is dropping rapidly." "How is that possible?" Thexal asked. "I don't know, sir. The control systems show normal operation, but the field generators are receiving conflicting harmonics from somewhere within the colony." Captain Velcor felt a cold realization growing in his mind. He activated his communication unit and called the security station monitoring Do-hyun's quarters. "Report on the human's current location," he ordered. "The guest appears to be in his quarters, sir. No movement detected since last night." But Velcor was not satisfied. He led a security team at a run through the colony's corridors toward Do-hyun's residential area. Something was very wrong, and every instinct told him their human guest was at the center of it. They reached Do-hyun's quarters to find the door unlocked and the room empty. On the bed lay a neatly folded set of Veltar civilian clothes. The human was gone. "Find him," Velcor snarled into his communicator. "Search every building, check every security camera. I want that human found immediately." Meanwhile, Do-hyun was moving through the colony's maintenance tunnels wearing a stolen engineer's uniform. The Veltar were good at monitoring their main corridors and public spaces, but they had grown complacent about their service areas. 30 years of peace had made them careless about internal security. He emerged from a ventilation grate in the main power distribution center where he had spent so many helpful hours learning about Veltar systems. The facility was in chaos as technicians ran between control panels trying to understand why their equipment was malfunctioning. Do-hyun walked calmly to the primary power coupling that fed energy to the shield generators. He produced a small device from his pocket and attached it to the coupling's control interface. The device immediately began transmitting a specific harmonic frequency directly into the power grid. "Excuse me," called one of the technicians. "You should not be in here during the emergency." Do-hyun turned with a smile. "Just trying to help," he said in perfect Veltar. The technician's eyes widened in shock as he recognized their human guest. "You," the alien gasped. "How did you—" Do-hyun moved faster than the technician could react. His hand struck precise nerve points on the alien's neck, causing immediate unconsciousness. Years of combat training had prepared him for this moment. Above them in orbit, Admiral Zethek was receiving increasingly desperate reports from the colony below. His fleet's sensors showed the shield generators beginning to flicker like a dying light. "All ships to battle stations," he commanded. Something is attacking the colony from within, but his sensors showed no enemy vessels anywhere in the system. Whatever was causing the shield failure was not visible to their detection systems. The quantum barriers that had protected Colony Nexus 7 for 3 decades began to collapse in sections. The carefully maintained field harmonics fell apart as conflicting frequencies overwhelmed the control systems. Dr. Kirill watched in horror as his life's work disintegrated before his eyes. "The shields are failing," he reported to Commander Thexal. "I estimate complete collapse within 30 minutes. "How?" Thexal demanded. "Who is doing this?" Captain Velcor's voice crackled over the communication system. "Sir, we have found evidence that our human guest has been sabotaging our systems. He planted some kind of devices throughout the colony." "One human," Thexal said in disbelief. "One Injured refugee did all this. Sir, the communications officer called urgently. We are receiving a transmission from the human. He is broadcasting on all frequencies. Put him on the main screen. Do-hyun's face appeared on the command center's display. He was no longer the grateful injured refugee they had rescued. His eyes were hard, and his expression showed the confidence of someone executing a carefully planned military operation. Greetings, Colony Nexus 7, Do-hyun said calmly. My name is Do-hyun, and I am a human intelligence operative. For 6 weeks you have harbored me in your colony, while I mapped your defenses and prepared your destruction. Commander Thexal stared at the screen in shock. Impossible. You were injured, helpless. I was exactly what I needed to be, Do-hyun replied. Your shields are falling. Your systems are compromised. Your supposedly impregnable fortress is about to become our prize. You are one being, Dr. Kirill interrupted from beside the commander. What can one human accomplish against an entire colony? Do-hyun smiled, and the expression was not pleasant. Doctor, you made a critical error in your assumptions. You believed I was alone because you saw only one escape pod. But humans are never truly alone. As if summoned by his words, the colony's sensor arrays began detecting new contacts at the edge of the system. Ships that had been invisible moments before suddenly appeared on every display screen. Admiral Zethuk's voice came over the communication link filled with shock and growing fear. Commander, we have multiple contacts approaching at high speed. Unknown ship configurations. They appear to be using some kind of stealth technology. How many ships? Commander Thexal demanded. Estimated 200 vessels, sir. Ranging from small fighters to large capital ships. They are moving in perfect formation. Do-hyun continued his broadcast with obvious satisfaction. Allow me to introduce my partners in this operation. Jin-woo commands our assault fleet. So-young designed the technology that allowed us to remain hidden beyond your sensor range. Together we have spent months planning the fall of your untouchable fortress. The approaching human fleet moved with precision that impressed even the experienced Veltar military officers. Each ship maintained perfect spacing and timing as they approached the failing colonial defenses. Sir, the sensor operator called urgently. The lead ships are launching smaller craft, hundreds of them. They appear to be boarding pods. Captain Velcor realized with growing horror what was about to happen. They intend to take the colony intact. This is not a destruction mission, it is a capture operation. Correct, Captain, Do-hyun said, having overheard the comment through the open communication channels. We have no intention of destroying what we can use. Your technology, your facilities, your population all have value to humanity. The quantum shields flickered and died as the last of the generator nodes fell to Do-hyun's sabotage. For the first time in 30 years, Colony Nexus 7 stood completely undefended against outside attack. Admiral Zethuk ordered his orbital fleet to engage the approaching humans, but discovered that their weapons were largely ineffective. The human ships used defensive systems that deflected or absorbed energy weapons, while their own attacks seemed to ignore Veltar shields entirely. How is this possible? Zethuk demanded, as his flagship shuddered under human fire. Their technology was supposed to be primitive. Jin-woo's voice answered him from the lead human vessel. Admiral, you made the same mistake as everyone else. You assumed that different meant inferior. Human engineering follows different principles than yours, but that does not make it less effective. The human boarding pods began landing throughout the colony with surgical precision. Each pod carried a small team of human soldiers who moved with the same tactical efficiency their species was becoming known for throughout the galaxy. Do-hyun met the first boarding team at the main power center where he had been coordinating his sabotage efforts. The team leader was a woman with short black hair and eyes that missed nothing. Status report, she said without ceremony. All primary. Objectives achieved, So-young, Do-hyun replied. Shields down. Communications disrupted. Leadership isolated in the command center. The colony is yours. So-young nodded with satisfaction. Jin-woo sends his compliments on a perfectly executed infiltration. The fleet engagement is proceeding as planned. Through the colony's communication system, they could hear the reports of human teams securing critical facilities throughout Nexus 7, the water treatment plants, the power generators, the food production facilities, the spaceport. Every important system was being captured intact by soldiers who knew exactly where to find them. Commander Thexel found himself trapped in the command center as human forces surrounded the building. His security teams reported that resistance was useless. The humans seemed to know every defensive position and had countermeasures prepared for every weapon. "How did they learn so much about our defenses?" he asked Captain Velcor. 6 weeks, Velcor replied bitterly. 6 weeks of guided tours and helpful questions and innocent curiosity. That human saw everything we had, and we showed it to him willingly. Dr. Kirill stared at the tactical displays showing human forces moving through his colony with perfect coordination. The level of planning required for this operation is staggering. They must have been preparing for months. "Years," came Do-hyun's voice over the communication system. "This mission began 3 years ago when human intelligence first identified Colony Nexus 7 as a priority target. Every detail was planned and rehearsed until we could execute it perfectly." The orbital battle ended with Admiral Zethuk's surrender. After half his fleet had been disabled by human weapons that seemed to ignore every defensive system the Veltar possessed. The human ships moved to surround the remaining Veltar vessels while boarding parties prepared to secure them. Jinwoo's image appeared on the colony's main communication screen. He was a tall human with calm eyes and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. Behind him, the bridge of his ship showed technology that was clearly far more advanced than anything the Veltar had expected from humanity. "Colony Nexus 7 is now under human control," he announced. "All Veltar personnel will remain calm and follow the instructions of human forces. Anyone who cooperates will be treated well. Anyone who resists will face the consequences." Commander Thexal activated his personal communicator one final time. "This is Commander Thexal to all Confederacy forces. Colony Nexus 7 has fallen to human attack. Do not trust any human refugees or prisoners. They are far more dangerous than we believed." So Young's team reached the command center and began cutting through the reinforced doors with weapons that melted through Veltar armor like it was soft clay. Within minutes, the colony's leadership found themselves facing human soldiers whose equipment was obviously superior to anything in their own arsenal. "Commander Thexal," So Young said politely as her troops secured the room. "I am So Young, Human Fleet Intelligence Officer. Your colony is now a human possession." "One human," the commander said, staring at Do-hyun, who had entered with the soldiers. "How could one human accomplish all this?" Do-hyun looked at the defeated alien commander with something that might have been pity. "You still do not understand, do you, Commander? You keep saying one human as if that means something. But every human carries within them the knowledge and determination of our entire species. When you rescued me from that crash, you did not face one injured refugee. You faced the combined intelligence and will of all humanity." The last pockets of resistance throughout the colony surrendered as human forces demonstrated weapons and tactics that made continued fighting pointless. In less than 4 hours, the supposedly impregnable Colony Nexus 7 had fallen completely to human control. As night fell over the captured colony, Jinwoo, So Young, and Do-hyun stood together on the observation deck that had once been Commander Thexal's favorite place to admire his perfect defenses. "Phase 1 complete," So Young reported. "Total human casualties 0. Colonial infrastructure captured intact. Intelligence value immeasurable." Jinwoo nodded with satisfaction. "Signal the fleet. Prepare for Phase 2 operations. We have 17 more untouchable colonies to visit." Do-hyun smiled as he looked out over the city that now flew human flags instead of Veltar banners. They believed this place could never be taken. They were wrong. The age of human expansion had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 months after the fall of Colony Nexus 7, Commander Thexal sat in a human detention facility, watching news reports from across the galaxy. The screen showed image after image of Veltar colonies surrendering to human forces. Each conquest followed the same pattern. A mysterious accident or refugee situation. A helpful human survivor offering assistance. Then sudden coordinated attacks that overwhelmed defenses no enemy had ever penetrated before. The door to his cell opened and Do-hyun entered carrying 2 cups of what appeared to be some kind of warm beverage. The human had traded his stolen engineer's uniform for the simple gray clothing of a human military officer. Commander Do-hyun said politely, offering one of the cups. I thought you might like to try human tea. It helps calm the mind during difficult times. Thexal accepted the cup, but did not drink. Why are you here, human? Have you come to mock your defeated enemy? Not at all, Do-hyun replied, sitting across from the former colony commander. I came to answer the question you asked during our final conversation. What question? How one human could defeat your entire civilization? Thexal studied his captor with eyes that had lost much of their former arrogance. You said every human carries the strength of your species. Philosophical words, but they do not explain your victory. Do-hyun sipped his tea thoughtfully. Let me tell you about human history, Commander. For thousands of years, my species fought wars against enemies who seemed impossible to defeat. Larger armies, better weapons, superior numbers. Again and again, humans faced opponents who should have crushed us easily. Yet you survived. More than survived. We won. Do you know why? Thexal remained silent, waiting for the explanation. Because humans learned something that other species never understood. Do-hyun continued. We learned that victory does not come from having the best technology or the strongest weapons. Victory comes from using whatever you have more effectively than your enemy expects. Your ships were invisible to our sensors, Thexal pointed out. Your weapons ignored our defenses. You clearly had superior technology. Do-hyun smiled. Commander, those ships were built in hidden shipyards using plans, stolen from a dozen different species, including your own. The stealth technology came from the Kresh Empire. The weapons were based on captured Zephyrian designs. The shield penetrators used modified Veltar quantum field theories. The alien commander stared at his captor in shock. You stole from everyone. We learned from everyone, Do-hyun corrected gently. Humans are natural students, Commander. When we encounter something that works, we study it until we understand how to make it work better. Your quantum shields were indeed impressive, but they were designed by beings who thought in predictable patterns. Humans think differently. You found a weakness we never considered. We found dozens of weaknesses. The harmonic resonance vulnerability was just the most elegant solution. Do-hyun leaned forward slightly. But the real victory was not technical, Commander. It was psychological. Explain. Your people had lived behind those shields for 30 years. 30 years of absolute safety made you forget what danger looked like. When I crashed on your world, you saw exactly what you expected to see. A primitive refugee from an inferior species. Someone harmless who posed no threat to your superior civilization. Thexal felt a growing understanding of how completely he had been deceived. You used our prejudices against us. Your assumptions became your weakness, Do-hyun agreed. You showed me everything because you believed I could not possibly understand or use what I learned. You gave me access to your most secure facilities because you thought human technology was too primitive to threaten you. The medical scanning device was actually a quantum processor more advanced than anything in your databases, but your doctors assumed it was a simple life support system because that fit their expectations about human capabilities. Do-hyun stood and walked to the small window that looked out over the detention facility's exercise yard. Other captured Veltar officers were moving about in the afternoon sunlight under the watchful eyes of human guards. The most dangerous enemy, Commander, is not the one with better weapons than you. It is the one you do not recognize as an enemy until too late. How long have humans been planning this war? Thexal asked. There is no war, Commander. Wars are fought between equals. This is something else entirely. The alien felt a chill at those words. What do you mean? Do-hyun returned to his seat and looked directly into Thexal's large black eyes. Your confederacy, controls 47 major colonies and over 300 smaller settlements. Each one is protected by defenses similar to what you had at Nexus 7. Each one considers itself untouchable. You intend to attack them all. We intend to capture them all, the same way we captured yours. One human infiltrator, one carefully planned operation, one colony at a time until your entire civilization belongs to humanity. Thexal realized the full scope of what he was hearing. This was never about destroying us. You want to absorb the entire Confederacy into your empire. Not absorb, Commander, integrate. Humans do not destroy what we can use. Your people have valuable skills and knowledge. Your colonies have resources we need. Your technology has applications we can improve upon. You would make slaves of us all. Do-hyun shook his head firmly. Slaves are inefficient, Commander. We prefer willing cooperation. Those who work with us will find their lives improved. Those who resist will find resistance futile. He activated a small communication device and brought up a holographic display, showing star charts of the local galaxy. Red markers indicated human-controlled systems. Blue markers showed current human operations. Green markers represented future targets. As of today, humans control 15 former Veltar colonies, Do-hyun explained. 17 more are in the process of being infiltrated. By the end of this year, we estimate controlling over half of your territory. How is this possible? Thexal demanded. Your species was unknown to us 5 years ago. Where did you come from? We came from systems you never bothered to explore, Commander. From worlds you dismissed as worthless because they lacked the resources you valued. While you built your grand colonies and celebrated your advanced technology, humans were watching and learning and preparing. Do-hyun manipulated the display to show human expansion over the past decade. The pattern was clear: steady, methodical growth that had gone completely unnoticed by major galactic powers. We studied every species we encountered. We learned your languages, your customs, your psychology, your technology. Most importantly, we learned your weaknesses. The Kresh Empire will never allow human expansion to continue, Thexal said with desperate hope. They have fleets that could crush your forces. Commander, the Kresh Empire is currently dealing with internal rebellions on 12 of their core worlds. Rebellions that began when mysterious human advisors arrived to help local resistance movements organize more effectively. The alien commander felt his last hopes crumble. You are everywhere. Humans are adaptable, Commander. We can survive in environments that would kill most species. We can learn languages that others find impossible to speak. We can integrate into societies that consider us primitive or harmless. These abilities make us excellent infiltrators. Do-hyun stood to leave, then paused at the door. You asked how one human could defeat your entire civilization. The answer is that it was never just one human. Every human who walked through your colony was part of a larger plan. Every question I asked was designed to gather specific intelligence. Every friendship I made was calculated to provide access to critical information. You felt nothing for us, Thexal said bitterly. No genuine emotion or connection. Do-hyun considered the question seriously. I felt respect for your achievements, Commander. Your shield technology was truly impressive. Dr. Kirill was brilliant even if his assumptions were flawed. Engineer Mexta had insights that will be valuable in improving human systems. But you destroyed us anyway. We conquered you because conquest was necessary for human expansion. Personal feelings cannot be allowed to interfere with strategic objectives. The human officer opened the door to leave, then looked back one final time. Commander Thexal, you have a choice to make. You can spend the rest of your life mourning the fall of the Confederacy, or you can help us build something better. Humans value competence and experience. Your skills could serve humanity well. You want me to betray my own people. I want you to help your people survive and prosper in a galaxy that now belongs to humanity. The Confederacy as you knew it is finished. Commander, the question is whether its people will have a place in what comes next. Do-hyun left the detention cell and walked through corridors that hummed with human activity. The facility had once been a Veltar military base, but was now being converted to serve human administrative functions. Everywhere, Veltar civilians worked alongside human supervisors, learning new procedures and adapting to new realities. In the Central Command Center, Jin Woo and So Young were coordinating operations across 17 different star systems. Holographic displays showed the progress of ongoing infiltration missions, while communication channels carried reports from human operatives scattered throughout former Confederacy space. Status report, Do-hyun requested as he joined his partners. Excellent progress on all fronts, So Young replied. Colony Vex Prime surrendered this morning after their shields failed. The infiltration team reported minimal resistance. Admiral Haewon signals that the Kethvar shipyards are now under human control, Jinwoo added. Production has been converted to human specifications. We should have our first locally built ships within 6 months. Do-hyun nodded with satisfaction. The plan was proceeding exactly as designed. Within 2 years, humanity would control enough resources and territory to challenge any remaining galactic powers. The age of human dominance was beginning. Outside the command center's windows, the red soil of Kethvar stretched toward the horizon, dotted with human installations and Veltar settlements now flying human flags. Transport ships moved between orbital facilities carrying the wealth of a conquered civilization to human colonies throughout the galaxy. Any word from the infiltration team at Colony Theta 9? Do-hyun asked. Agent Minho reports successful integration into their scientific community, So Young answered. Shield generator vulnerabilities identified, sabotage devices in position. Ready to proceed on our signal. And the Kresh Empire situation? Jinwoo smiled grimly. Agent Tae-jin has been promoted to advisor for their defense ministry. She now has access to their complete military databases and fleet deployment schedules. Do-hyun felt the deep satisfaction that came from seeing a perfectly executed plan unfold according to design. Humanity had learned to be patient, to plan in decades rather than years, to think strategically while acting tactically. The galaxy had dismissed humans as primitive newcomers. That assumption had been the first step toward their own defeat. Prepare the next phase of operations, Do-hyun ordered. Signal all infiltration teams to begin final preparations. The Untouchable fortress was just the beginning. As night fell over the conquered colony, 3 humans stood together planning the conquest of civilizations that still believed themselves safe behind their perfect defenses. They would learn, as the Veltar had learned, that nothing in the galaxy was truly untouchable when humanity decided to reach for it. The stars belonged to those bold enough to take them, and humanity had proven to be very bold indeed.